Check, check. Now, why is the camera not turning on? Oh, come on. The hell? Starting. Hello, check, check. um, come on, picture. Oh, hang on. I think I know why. Lens. Nope. Camera. Camera, and just when I thought I'd figure this thing out. It seems to be broadcasting audio, but not. Can't see the picture. Okay, here we go. Picture is coming in. 1, 2. On Tomat. Where's the. Damn. Ta-da! Okay, so I think. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm live with a picture and everything. Awesome. Let's just switch to this. Okay, let's turn that. Turn this on. Turn this on.
Battery 100%.
Turn on. Okay. Okay. Go, 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 go. Ooh, that was loud. Okay, so I'll say hide. Oh, there's a weird delay. Anywho. And it's coming across quite loud. Apparently, there's one person who's waiting. And. Well, we'll do that. Live. You. Here and see me. Yeah, why does it still say waiting? Okay. Well, let's just. Let's see if we refresh it on here where they'll play. Okay, let me try a different browser. Okay, it says one's watching, but I'm not sure whether that's just me. Oh. Okay, this really odd. ought not to be this complex. Why does it say waiting? Because I don't want to get on with that, only to get to a point where I realize that come on. Oh wow, this thing's quite loud. Huh? I can push it back a bit. Now the question is, should I just carry on because we are 10 minutes into it, or shall I carry on trying to figure out why it is not going live, or why there's this weird confusion as to whether I am actually live or not? Okay. Hang on. I think I might have figured it out. I think it says waiting because I've not refreshed this page. Okay, cool. Okay, I think we're on. Good, good, good. Let's just quickly check the analytics so that we have a live point of reference of the status of the stream. Okay. Okay, check. It says the stream share is okay, 720. Okay, cool. I'll just reduce the volume on here. Okay, cool. So, thank you. Oh crap. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully, some of you folks can get the time to tune in and talk about some of the issues of the community that I've just, in a way, been reaching out to the community, just asking like, what are your concerns? Because I felt I had some for some time, and just kind of got to a point where I was like, hey, you know what? I think just asking other folks, from their point of view, like, are there things which are not sitting right with you? Do you feel like this community sort of has its priorities in the right place? The leadership, whether that is, it's so disconcerting hearing myself again. I mean, I want to know that I sound okay, but at the same time, I don't want to keep hearing myself or hearing myself back. Anyway, so what I did is, I posted up, a number of, I've been combing through the threads on the forum and, trying to get a sense, what sense? Try to sort of get, a sense of sort of temperature of what people's views are on this. Because there are a number of issues which are kind of popping up in different threads. So I thought, you know what, actually, let me just go ahead and post up a few threads directly asking what people's views on this are. So I did so, and I managed to sort of summarize both like the problems and the suggested solutions. So far, my understanding, actually, I can possibly share. Shall I share the screen of this particular document, or would that make more sense? Yeah, sure. Let's try that. Let's just first make it a lot larger. And then we'll switch over to that. Boom. So this is, oh crap. This is the summary. Just come here, screen share, application window, boom, share, haha. Okay, need to scroll down a little bit. Okay, yeah, so this is, or at least this is my sort of quick summary of the problems. I mean, some are kind of nested into others, meaning like if you solve this one problem, the rest will sort of be taken care of. They're sort of like splinters of a much bigger problem. And so far, basically, in no particular order of importance, it's this idea of tolerance, right? Tolerance. So we've got mercenary versus missionary, or community, which is in a way divided between these two sort of camps. People who are sort of short term and those who are long term. Those who are more privacy um, preserving or caring, um, versus those who aren't, I suppose. Um, and then you've got those who are, yeah, risk appetite. Basically, you've got some who are more open to risk, and those who are quite risk averse. So in a way, this tolerance issue. So I'll just kind of list all of them, or speak, and then speak in detail about them afterwards. So the second point here is subjective, non-standard, basically community guidelines, which is resulting in suppression of speech. And the idea here is that it seems that we're slowly or gradually heading towards a kind of Patreon type situation. The Patreon versus Sargon of Akkad, Sargon of Akkad, controversy, or no, I was gonna say TIFF. TIFF makes it sound so what's it called? So small. I mean, something that blew up because it's a weird thing where they have an objective, what ought to be an objective standard of the terms of service or terms of use, but then they then layer on top of that this idea that that's then subject to subjective opinion, on a case by case basis, right? So depending on the person on either side, the person doing the judging, and the person being judged, and rules or laws can't really operate in an environment where it's subjective, basically. And then suppression of speech that then leads to a slippery slope, downward spiral, of people not feeling heard, and people not being heard, and people or a person or people just getting more and more irate, right, and creating enemies of people who really ought not to be. and for no good reason. So, and then the final one here is contribution confusion, right? So we've got tolerance, lack of or subjective standards, and contribution confusion. By contribution confusion, just to expand on that a little bit, what I mean is, we've got people who want, for example, with translation, right? I've been involved with some of the efforts in trying to translate stuff for the community, but what has sort of come to surface is the idea that is this notion, oh, not notion, is the fact that there is no consistent way to be able to, to just sort of rock up and be able to have a presentation of the possible things that one can translate listed in a prioritized manner, right? Because priority is important. And then, besides priority, in a standardized manner, so what's happening so far is, people are translating, but people are not able to know what's more pressing than what issue is more pressing than the other, which then, would need their contribution. And then secondly, they do not know what has already been translated, right? So that then results in duplicative efforts, right? And that, obviously can just lead to frustration, right? If you're like, oh man, I went to the lengths of translating this whole thing only to find that someone has already done it before. So these are basically in the general problems, as I said before. These are the high level problems. Well, the high level or low level, depending on the perspective that you look at it. Basically, just to go back to what I was saying before, to iterate or reiterate a point, these are generalizations of which I feel like if these key issues are solved, the other sort of smaller splinter problems from these, which would then be fixed. I suppose it's a bit like the thing with debugging code where, if you fix a particular small percent of bugs, and the others automatically sort of fix themselves, so to speak. So those are the problems. Well, let's have a look. How are we doing for time? Okay, 22. Not bad, not bad. Right, so to summarize the problem before I move on to the solutions, this idea of tolerance, I think, is quite key, and I'm not particularly sure how, with things set up as they are, how that will actually be able to solve itself, because in a way you have people who are in the ultimate within this environment, are in the ultimate position of power, um, mean, the someone to uh, delegate this kind of uh, which pro tolerate being if someone potentially this and then that by this a model of this is expose of them some that somehow so thing what is gibli sort of contain this split here is in a right from is that most people's intents are not to wait, hang on, let me just have a look at this window. Wait, yeah. I'm not quite sure if someone would be calling in how they would how would I actually be able to see that. I'm assuming it'll just pop up, I think. Not sure, but anyway, just carry on. Yeah, so subjective non-standards. There's the idea of intent, right? I feel like a key part of this has to be intent. If someone is saying something with a particular intent, intent needs to be understood and put into consideration with most of these things. As I was saying, someone in the forum pointed out that most people actually are well intended. It's not like we're having people who are coming on who are just trolling or shilling a particular thing, or asking when moon or when whatever. It's actually most of the conflict is coming from well-meaning people who actually their intentions, if you zoom out and look at the trajectory of the evolution that that this project will and crypto in general will take, is actually quite in line with it. So I think intentions in this case need to be considered. And then the last thing here on the list is this idea of contribution confusion. Again, as things are set up, right? So far, from my estimation, the best way is in the context, say, of translation. The best way to utilize this is to create a wiki, which which people can then actually have one place to be able to see what's of priority and what has already been done, so they can either improve on what's already been done, or they can then move on to something else or to a different language, if they speak it, and translate it in that, because then they'll be able to see whether it has been done or not. So the wiki is a very good solution to this, and personally I've been looking into it, and I think it has great potential. And I hope to be showing or sharing some stuff before the end of the month regarding this particular thing. But so far as it stands, right, with say the admin from IOHK or Cardano Foundation, the employees, the idea is that there should be no consolidation in terms of, say, something like the wiki and the Cardano hub itself. And I've already made my case in terms of why I think this is a ill-conceived perspective.
why I think there ought to be consolidation, and how that does not detract from notions of decentralization. I've outlined it in a forum post. I forget its name at the moment, but if you go into Mr. Axie's profile of the forum and have a look at the posts that I've created, it's one of them. I've not created that many topics on the forum, but it's one of them. So I've got some ideas there. In summary, actually, I think the core of the problem is quite possibly this. It's quite possibly this. It's a misalignment of incentives, right? Where we have these three entities whose key characters at the core are quite different, right? So for IHK, you've got academics for the most part, right? For Emergo, you've got commerce or businesses. And for Cardano Foundation, you've got the community, you've got people, right? You've got just people within the community who like the idea, who love the idea of the possibility of this technology, and understand, I suppose, in many ways that a currency such as this is much like a language, where a language is only as valuable as it's used, right? Or as many people speak it. So in this case, you've got IOHK, who are academics, who are primarily incentivized or motivated by status / ego, right? Academics, that's a thing where status, you even have things like tenure and and so on, and so the different awards that are given. Those tend to mean a lot more to academics than say anything else. I mean, they do get paid, but that's not the that's not the motivating factor for majority of them. Then, so with the next company or entity, you've got commerce, right? So Emergo, responsible for sort of advancing the commercial use of Cardano. What businesses are motivated by and in a way incentivized by, fundamentally, is money, I would argue, right? So most entities are for profit. Money is what is quite central. Money is the language. Money is sort of the blood of companies. That's what makes it beat. That's what makes them able to hire people to build things, and that's what they get in return when they sell the product or service. Now, for the community, right, what Cardano Foundation is supposed to be representing, it's neither of the aforementioned things. It's not status, it's not money, it's fundamentally purpose, the way I see it. So I think what's happening right now is, I think, the heads at the top from IOHK, I suppose the leadership, is utilizing money in a way to try and solve problems. It's trying to use incentives which are misaligned, by employing, by having, I would argue, employees be the ones responsible for community. It's is it a deterrent? It's limiting, I would argue. For the most part, it's limiting. It creates a bottleneck. So I would argue that community needs to be a lot more for and by the community itself. So with that said, I don't want to take oh crap, did it present to anyone? Yeah, stop. Oh, what the hell? What do you mean? What happened? Oh, okay. There was a bit of a lag there between it shifting from the document, presenting the document, to coming back to the webcam. So anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make here is I feel like, I suppose at the root, at the core, the problem is an incentive misalignment, where I feel like money is trying to be used to solve the problem of community, when that's when you should really be using that to empower members within the community who are already doing a whole bunch without even, say, monetary compensation at the moment, but structuring monetary compensation in a way that would enable even more to be done, right? To have like an exponent, we should be striving for an exponential level of growth and contribution, right? So yeah, that's a summary of what I think at the top, right? So it is the issue, or that I've gathered, right? So this is not just in a way, a subjective thing. It's influenced by, combing through the forum, posting, topics, directly asking folks for their concerns on the forum as well as on Reddit as well, and reading through, all those bits of feedback. Yeah, so my takeaway so far is, from the top, incentive misalignment, and then further down, you've got things like, what shall we call it? We've got a byproduct, which is, lack of tolerance, or intolerant. No, it's not intolerance. Is it? Anyway, a lack of tolerance. Community standards which are subjective and non-standard, as well as confusion in terms of community members wanting to contribute. So I was hoping that, some folks would have called in and had, had a conversation back and forth about this, but for whatever reason, no one has, and that's cool. I mean, it would be interesting to find out why. Nonetheless, I am forging ahead with my ideas of how I can suggest some possible solutions, or not suggest, but actually make solutions, which over the few coming weeks I hope to present gradually, and hopefully have a wider conversation with folks, and not just speaking to myself, although I don't mind speaking to myself. And actually, just quickly before I go, I want to mention a possible solution which I feel that I picked up on. It was by a community member called RJM Coin, where they said, actually, they proposed this idea of limiting posts per day, and there was some opposing views, if I remember correctly. But I remember coming across this idea and reading further exchanges discussing the idea, and thinking that actually this could be a good idea, provided it's done in a transparent and accountable way, and it applies to everyone. I think it would give, creating this in a way scarce resource, of a voice, sort of makes you spend in a thrifty way. So in a way, I think it would have a beautiful effect across different things. It would limit, in a way, it would limit, I suppose, insults, because it would make people stop and think a little bit longer about what they want to say in response, as opposed to, because right now, you could just say anything. So yeah, it would get people to think a little bit deeper, but also what it would do, as a byproduct. This is why, I like this suggestion. It sort of solves things on multiple levels. It would sort of lessen less thought out contributions, right? So it'd improve the quality of interaction, but also it would reduce the quantity, right? Because we all know we live in an age of information overload, and it's no different on the forum, right? So I come back to the forum, I'm like, I see unread and what is it, new and unread, and there's just so many that there's really no way that I can sustainably read all of these things every single day, right? So this means that some really good topics and ideas are not being read, are just going by the wayside. So what this would do is actually, in lessening the quantity and increasing the quality, it would create an environment where people are able to be better informed, which I believe is a good thing. And I think other ideas along such lines would be helpful. I think ultimately, actually, the bottleneck of, as I said, the bottleneck that's created by the incentive misalignment, ultimately, I think the way to solve that is to create a different, a new environment, which at its core is, about being radically transparent and accountable for and by the community, that operates in a way that is non-interventional, excuse me, and creates an environment where people are able to be ambitious, right? Because I feel like right now a lot of the bickering that's happening is actually coming from the fact that people are not ambitious. Like people people bickering because of the lack of aspirational, ambitional efforts. So I believe creating an environment where such things can happen would be really good. So I hope I was able to communicate some of my takeaways of the problems and sort of the hierarchy of them. I hope, given that no one has managed to call in, the wonderful thing about this is that this call is going to be available for prosperity online. It's going to be a video that you'll be able to watch back. If you do watch this back and have a thought about any of these ideas, just feel free. I'll leave the link to the forum topic in the description. And I shall possibly mute the comments on YouTube, but comment on the forum and I'll be able to respond yeah, that's just it's a much better way to do that. So thank you for your time, and speak to you next week. Live long and prosper.